Doom 2016 was a huge gamble in just about every way you could imagine. It seemed to take an outdated premise that no one really harbored an interest in anymore, and bring it into the modern scene with updated graphics and mechanics. And not only did it end up paying off and succeeding in ways that no one really thought it would, but it did so all while proving that there was indeed a proper way to reinvigorate a franchise. And I think a lot, if not almost all of that, can be accredited to id Software for making such a great successor to their original games. Doom Eternal, however, aims to one-up what they've already done in Doom 2016 to quite a significant degree. Everything from new weapons to new movement abilities, and even having the courtesy to get rid of that nasty crouch feature. By the way, do you remember that you could crouch in Doom 2016? Yeah, I didn't either. I had to be reminded of that. I've never done Doom content on this channel before, but I figured if a gamble as massive as the creation of Doom 2016 would pay off for id Software, then maybe the same would happen with the video dedicated to their game. Now that we have a new gameplay trailer to look at, I think this is a great time to take a somewhat deep dive into some of the more implicit details you may have missed in Doom Eternal. So, let's begin. In a game that centralizes around demons and demonic invasions, there will obviously be a lot of religious undertones in that game as well. We see these massive pentagram shapes being carved into the Earth's surface at the beginning of the new gameplay trailer that was released not too long ago, and that's definitely a shape we got really used to seeing in Doom 2016. Some other previous gameplay trailers have given us a pretty good scope of the level design and the types of environments we'll be fighting in. Here, for instance, we are seeing a sort of chapel-esque structure with really gothic building architecture that really does a good job making it feel like you're fighting these demons in a chapel-themed setting. When asked about new locations in Doom Eternal, specifically this gothic-looking area with a bluish tint here, Marty Stratton, the game's executive producer, seemed a tad hesitant to divulge any information, and his reply was anything but straightforward. According to this article here by Game Revolution, he began asking patrons of QuakeCon what they thought it was, and that this new environment was actually an entire new area to explore that was unlike Hell or Earth. Even in the story trailer, we got a couple glances at a really interesting new enemy type that, well, definitely isn't a demon. I'm excited to find out. Do you remember the glory kill function in Doom 2016? Well, yeah, of course you do. Do you remember it being a feature that allowed you to regain some health if you were running low? Well, in Doom Eternal, it looks like killing and dispatching of demons in certain ways can actually give you certain resources. Everyone has seen the new Doomslayer's shoulder-mounted accessory that can allow him to access a new variety of powers and gadgets, and of course, probably the most popular of those new tools is the flamethrower function. Everyone knows the flamethrower exists, but here in this gameplay clip here that actually showcases armor being farmed by the flamethrower weapon. As it turns out, flamethrower kills will actually make enemies drop armor shards that you can then collect, sort of similar to how glory kills in Doom 2016 would give you extra health resources, or chainsaw kills would give you extra ammunition. It's sort of unclear as to whether or not this is the only type of weapon you can do this with. I'm guessing this is an elemental type deal, where fire-based weaponry can melt the armor off of enemies. And from this very same gameplay clip, it looks like damage from the rocket launcher can do this exact same thing as well. So I'm really interested to see the extra layer of combat this sort of resource farming could add to the rest of the game. If you remember the old combat power-ups from Doom 2016, like quad damage, berserk mode, and others, you'll probably be glad to hear that these same arcade-style power-ups are also being implemented into Doom Eternal in very new ways. For starters, if you take a glance at the top leftmost portion of the player UI, you're actually going to see a life counter. And if you take a look at other gameplay clips that have demoed throughout Doom Eternal's mini showcases, You'll definitely find an instance every now and then where the Doomslayer picks up an extra life power-up that's designed to look like just one of the classic 1-up extra life symbols you'll recognize, not only in the older Doom games, but also a lot of older arcade-style platforms just in general. No longer will your progress reset immediately after dying like in Doom 2016, as Doom Eternal seems to hinge a little more on the older arcade-style checkpoint systems having to do with multiple lives, getting extra 1-ups, and only being sent back to your last checkpoint when those lives run out. Now, I'm assuming since this makes it much harder for you to actually be sent back to a checkpoint, the checkpoints will also be spaced out with a little less lenience than in Doom 2016. So, taking a closer look at what makes Doom, well, Doom in the first place, Marty Stratton has said in statements before at QuakeCon that Doom Eternal is planned to have twice the amount of demons and enemy types as you saw in Doom 2016 at the absolute least, which is, that's just awesome. If you were a fan of the older games, you may run into some old friends that you'll undoubtedly recognize, such as the Pain Elemental, which is a demon that we've seen more than a couple times already. This was a demon that was pretty popular in the older Doom titles, and I would say it probably rivaled, if not surpassed, the popularity of the Kaka demon, which is another old demon type from the original games, but we kinda already saw that one in Doom 2016, so I don't really count that one. Another old enemy from some of the original games is the Arachnotron. At a first glance, it seems to borrow some design inspiration from not only the Arachnotrons of the older game, but also Olivia Pierce's final demonic form in Doom 2016. The faces look just extremely similar, and I'm sure there's a lore explanation for this somewhere, but I want to try and keep this video as streamlined as possible. However, in the meantime, if there's any interest in Doom lore, please be sure to let me know, and who knows, I may cover it in the future, if time permits. You remember rune challenges, right? Yeah, me neither. Or at least I never really saw the point behind them. They were definitely fun, but none of the runes you ever obtained from these challenges really seemed that necessary to the game, and most of the abilities the runes gave you in Doom 2016 just seemed like really minor quality of life convenience changes, such as being able to pull in resources from further away. Well, it turns out runes and rune challenges are going to work a little differently. Not only are runes now collectible, just like any other secret in the game, but rune challenges are sorta gone? Well, not really. They've been substituted with these new challenge areas known as Slayer Gates. And this is definitely something I'm looking forward to because if you look closely, you can see what looks like a gore nest hidden behind the gate. Now, if you remember in rune challenges, there were usually very systematic ways of dispatching of enemies that were often perceived by the player base as just really meticulous and annoying. Gore nests, however, usually don't have that drawback. If you sprung a gore nest in Doom 2016, for instance, there was no archaic system to getting rid of the demons. You just sort of killed shit until the nest was empty. I'm not sure if this could be the home of the new Horde mode a lot of the players have been asking for, but this looks like it would be pretty close to it. I'm sure we'll be finding out very soon. Up next, we have what might be one of my favorite updates to the Doom gameplay mechanics, which are movement abilities, environmental platforming, and these new, really weird environmental items known as punch blocks. The names of the objects are pretty self-explanatory. I don't feel like I have to say that much about what they're about. You punch it, and something happens. But these blocks apparently fulfill a pretty integral role in a lot of how the platforming and the parkour element, so to speak, will work in Doom Eternal. I've looked at gameplay of some of the more intricate environmental challenges, and it certainly isn't like Doom 2016 had any shortage of these, but it looks like movement is going to be a larger theme than it was in the previous game. So I'm led to assume the environmental puzzles and challenges will scale up a tad in difficulty to remain in step with that. It looks like your own movement abilities can be upgraded as well. I'm seeing the Doomslayer pulling off these really smooth double dashes in mid-air, which, if I had to guess, is definitely an ability you have to work your way towards in the game. This probably isn't just something you start with. And additionally, it looks like you'll even have the opportunity to make the environment fight for you using these resources called switches, which will activate numerous deadly traps and snares in the environment that you can use to kill demons if you're getting overwhelmed. One huge comment that the developers have made about their own game thus far is the very tentative UI design. The general agreement around the studio apparently is that the UI is definitely subject to change just because of how outdated things look. Well, apparently there are ways that you can customize the UI to your liking if it's too in your way, or you might be cluttered with too much information on the screen, for instance. This is a feature I believe the player base will be extremely receptive to, because I've seen so many games that only have the option to toggle the UI either completely visible or invisible. And according to what we've heard, it sounds like the player will have the freedom of being a bit more meticulous in terms of what elements of the UI they want to hide and what they want to have displayed during certain times. I don't know if others are guilty of this, but sometimes with games like these that feature really cool and immersive level design, I like to just turn the UI off completely and just kind of explore for a bit and just kind of take it all in. And it sounds like in Doom Eternal, you will be given all the tools and options you will need to do exactly that. And while we're on the topic of customizable UI, one particular gauge that probably caught my attention the most was the implementation of a corruption meter. I haven't been able to figure this thing out just because the information we've been given on how it works is extremely minimal, but there is another YouTuber on here named Quest Mode, and he dove pretty deep into everything that Doom Eternal is about, and I think his explanation of what it does and why it's here is pretty solid. Basically, if you open up your pause menu and navigate to your world map, you'll see that just about all of the sub-areas of the level you're in are color-coded in some way. These colors range from green, being completely expunged of demonic corruption, to purple, indicating an extremely thick demonic concentration in that area. And maybe you're given an extra reward at the end of the level for turning all the areas green as a sort of leaving no stone unturned, or I guess a leaving no demon unkilled sort of bonus. I'm really interested to see what this mechanic will eventually mean. I've linked the video below if you'd like to watch the full thing, which I would totally recommend. It has some pretty good stuff. One of the most massive news updates of QuakeCon 2019 was Stratton's introduction to how multiplayer and co-op features would work in Doom Eternal. According to him, and numerous articles that cite the news at QuakeCon, not only is the multiplayer being given a complete and, in my opinion, much needed overhaul, but some entirely new co-op features will be implemented into the game, such as the ability to hop into other worlds and invade the games of other players. Now, before the inevitable Dark Souls comparisons begin rolling in, I will say that this is really all of the information we've been given on this. Stratton says he never felt too keen on the Slayer versus Slayer aspect of Doom 2016 multiplayer, comparing it to other more immersive multiplayer experiences like Halo, for instance. So I'm not completely sure if invading other worlds means battling another Doomslayer character, because Stratton and the rest of the creative team all seem kinda adamant on washing that aspect out completely. What this could mean, however, is simply what a lot of us have wanted from a new Doom game for a while, which is the opportunity to grab another Slayer mate or a friend of yours and just tag team the literal hell out of the demonic hordes together. I think it's going to be an extremely welcome feature, and I'm absolutely psyched to see what it turns into. So, I said a while ago that part of what makes Doom the game that it is facing off against immeasurably grotesque and ugly demonic forces. Well, another equally important part of the full Doom experience is obviously having so many badass, sharp-looking weapons to kill them with. And in Doom Eternal, there's certainly no shortage of that. We've seen the Doomslayer being given just about every new toy we could think of, all for the sake of a more immersive and flexible gameplay experience. We've seen everything from a shoulder cannon, a forearm blade attachment, a grapple hook, all the way to a goddamn ethereal greatsword known as the Crucible. But not only are we being given newer weapons, but it seems as though some of the weapons are being modeled a little closer to their sister designs in the older Doom games. The updated plasma rifle, I believe, is likely the best example of this, as it features a weapon design that bears a much closer similarity to its original concept, which you can see right here. I'm not sure why the plasma rifle in Doom 2016 looked so different, but if I had to guess, I would say if you only had this weapon icon to go off of, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people would have confused it for like a shotgun type weapon, because the middle chamber of the gun looks really similar to a pumping mechanism. But thankfully, because id Software's art team are absolute badasses, they were able to concept a design for the plasma rifle that stayed unique and fresh looking while still paying tribute to the design in the older games. I think that's just about the end of what I have for you today, but I'm completely open to releasing more Doom content. It's a game that I've spent a lot of time following, and I'm not really sure why I've just now got around to making a video about it. I guess part of me didn't really think it would be suitable for this channel, but I'll never know if I don't try, right? Let me know if you're interested in more Doom-related content in the future, and I'll do what I can to deliver. Until next time, guys. See ya.